All right, we're picking all the division games against the spread with Pete Prisco and Brady Quinn. I'm Chris Hassel. Keep in mind, 4 of the last 7 playoff games have gone to overtime. Hopefully the trend continues. We continue to get great games, but we might be due for some stinkers out there. We do have a couple of games featuring 1 seed against a 6 seed. The first one, Saturday, 4:35 Eastern Time. The Vikings going on the road to face the 49ers, but it's a Vikings team that frankly has more playoff experience than this Niners team.
Yeah, look, I think this is going to be about 2 things in this game. It's going to start off with how the offensive line for Minnesota handles that vicious defensive front for the San Francisco 49ers. They're going to be rested. They're going to be ready to go. And this is an offensive line that performed well on the road versus the Saints, but it's not the same animal. You're going up against an entirely different group, and they did surrender a couple sacks in the last week in the wild card round. So that's going to be a huge challenge, and it's largely going to dictate what kind of impact Dalvin Cook has in this game, and Kirk Cousins for that matter. And then the next thing to keep an eye on is just Jimmy Garoppolo. His first start in the playoffs, how is he going to handle it? How is he going to handle a stingy defense, at least if we get what we saw from Mike Zimmer in that defense last week versus New Orleans? The game's going to come down to those 2 things, how that O-line plays for Minnesota and how Jimmy Garoppolo handles the moment.
And you started talking about defensive line. I thought you were going to talk about the Vikings because both defensive lines can really determine what happens in this game. The 49ers offensive line will be challenged in a big way. We saw the Saints offensive line get whipped last week by this Minnesota pass rush, and I think this is going to be a real challenge. You talk about Jimmy Garoppolo. If he's going to be able to make those plays, and he has a ton of big plays this season, they're going to have to block those edge rushers. Griffin and Hunter have to be blocked.
Are you concerned at all about Dalvin Cook's health? I mean, he says he's closer to 100% and that he's ready to take all the wear and tear.
Well, they better be able to run the ball in this game, and I think there's going to be opportunities to do that. And we said it last week. Everything they do is off that run game. They got the run game going at New Orleans. They have to get it going in San Francisco.
I think the tough part is Quan Alexander could be back for this game. To what extent, we don't know.
Will he play? The kid that took his place has played better than he has.
Fred Warner's been phenomenal this year.
Yeah, Greenlaw's been outstanding.
Greenlaw's been good too, another young player. But I think that's the difficulty, is trying to get a sense for what it's going to look like. Either way, I think this defense is set to be able to stop it and put this game on Kirk Cousins' shoulders. Then it becomes, in a shootout, who ends up winning that matchup. The interesting thing is going to be, how does the Minnesota Vikings, how do they match up with George Kittle and with Kyle Juszczyk? Because those are those Swiss Army knives where Kyle Shanahan does so much with both those players, whether it's Kittle all the way on the outside, releasing in the backfield, off the ball, on the ball, play action pass, the boot game. He's involved with all of it. I mean, heck, he can even throw some passes and get some fly sweeps every once in a while.
But when you look at the makeup of the Vikings defense, the middle of that defense, Kendricks has had a phenomenal year. Barr can run, and Harrison Smith, he's a Notre Dame guy. He can match up. So I think they have the players to match up with that group. I don't think that's going to be as much of an issue as whether they can stop the run in the middle of the line, because that's been a problem at times for them. Can they slow that run game down? On the other side, DJ Jones isn't in the middle of that line anymore. Sheldon Day's been starting in the middle. They can move him, I think, and have some success running inside.
He's done okay now.
He's solid.
He's another Notre Dame guy.
Oh, I know.
Be careful.
I know.
Kirk Cousins melted Pete's cold heart last week. He thinks Kirk's in for potentially a big game here, and the Vikings might be able to surprise some people. Why do you think that?
I just think they are going to run the ball, and again, when you can run the ball, he's going to have success throwing the football. Everything they do is off of that run game. Cook runs, he has success. It's not going to be a monster game because I think it's going to be a lower scoring game. I think both defenses are going to play big here. It's going to be the team that can get the most out of the passing game will be the team that wins it, and I'm going with Kirk Cousins in this game.
Football is a game of momentum, and you're right, Pete. Look, I think Minnesota's been improved. They're kind of bringing some momentum from last week into this week's game, and so that's why I think Minnesota will be able to keep it close. I don't see them pulling off the victory, though. I think it's going to be too tough against that defensive front of the 49ers, the rest that they have. And I think Kyle Shanahan, especially this 49ers team, at times they've gotten off to some fast starts. I think they get off to a fast start here. They make Minnesota play from behind. It ends up being a tight game. So Minnesota covers the 7 points, but San Francisco wins the game.
I think it was 1987. The Vikings beat the Saints in a playoff game and then went to San Francisco. I think they were the 6th seed at the time, or the 5th seed at the time, and upset the top seed 49ers on the road. It's happening again. The Vikings are going in and winning this game. I don't need the 7 points. Vikings win the game outright.
0 for 4 last week.
I know.
Okay.
0 for 4 against the spread, 0 for 4 straight up.
So what does that mean? It means
you're due.
I'm due.
Right?
Or it means they're going to continue this trend downward.
What was your record last week?
What was I? 2-2?
You're going to say,
Not too bad.
Better than
It was a tough week
0-4.
last week.
I think I was
There were a lot
3-1 against the spread, 2-2 straight up.
there were a lot of people that had bad weeks last week, believe me.
Yeah, I would have a bad week. It was okay.
49ers' first playoff game in 6 years. Brady, you talked about the hot hand,
Right.
momentum. How much might that factor in? The fact the Vikings have already gone on the road and beaten a 13-win team.
I think for Kirk Cousins and just being in the quarterback mindset, it's everything. All right, playing quarterback in the NFL is all about having confidence. And I think, in a way, Kirk Cousins kind of got that monkey off his back last week with an impressive performance, and in particular down the stretch in overtime. When he needed to make the big throws, he did. He came through. And now that he's gotten that off his back, it's almost freeing. And so I think he'll feel like he can go up to Santa Clara and he can let it loose, cut it loose. The difference, I think, though, is this is a tough secondary to go up against. And, Thielen hasn't been practicing this week. He's dealing with something. Diggs hasn't been practicing week. He's been dealing with an illness. They couldn't get him the football very much anyway. So how big of a factor will he be? And will Thielen play better than what he played like last week? He had a couple of drops. Made a big catch when he needed to, and so did Rudolph. But, you can't afford to make some of those mistakes versus a team like the 49ers.
I think there's a spot you can go to the one cornerback opposite Richard Sherman. Whoever plays there, you can attack that position and have success there. I think there's going to be opportunities away from Richard Sherman to throw the football.
Well, one thing we do know, this scheme with Robert Saleh, it's somewhat simple, right? It's the same system that comes from the Seattle Seahawks. So it's a lot of post-safety coverage. So we're going to see that defender in the middle of the field, and it's variations of man and zone and how they go about playing it. So, look, Kevin Stefanski, if he's the offensive guru and the one of these premier young guys in the league that should be vying for a head coaching job, this should be one where he should be able to scheme up a bunch of stuff for Diggs, for Thielen, for Rudolph to be able to find a lot of production this
I agree.
game.
Brady, you think Minnesota covers that 7?
I do. I think Minnesota covers, but San Francisco wins.
And Pete likes Minnesota straight up money line. Win it, cash it. By the way, the last 6 to beat a 1 was in 2010. The Jets beat the Patriots.